About a week ago, a bird flew into my kitchen window. Don't worry, it survived. I happened to be at the sink at the time, and I heard the loud thunk, and I thought, oh, what happened? And it sounded like something had fallen off the roof, but it, and maybe it had, but it was a fledgling sparrow who was, just learning to fly, and hung on to the window frame for quite a while. And its parents came over, and the male parent, I only know that because I looked up the markings online of house sparrows, and fed it a little bit. And at that point, it kind of, maybe that it needed the energy to fly, because it, well, at that point, kind of took off and dove and ended up below the window on the ground. And I thought, if any of those alley cats are around, this sparrow is not long for the world. But the alley cats never showed up. I don't know if the sparrows know. Maybe they know when they're going to show up. Probably. You have to be clever to be a sparrow. I had thought, and this is what I had heard several years ago, that sparrows, where I am, these house sparrows that were introduced from Europe in the 1850s, where I am, that there weren't a lot of them, but I've noticed in the last couple of years there are a ton of them, and so I think their population is back. But I thought about bird populations, and I wondered, what are the largest bird populations in the world, and what are bird populations that are very small and not frighteningly small. So on today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, I am going to talk about a tale of two birds. One, the most populous species of wild bird in the world, and the other, probably the least populous, or at least one of the least populous species of wild birds in the whole world. They're across the world from each other. And of course, we'll ask the cards, population 55, which one of them is going to sing today. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet, only on YouTube. If you've been enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, thank you so much. If you have a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. Let me start with the least populous bird, and that is probably the Kakapo, which is found on the islands of New Zealand. The Kakapo is a fascinating bird for a lot of reasons. Like many birds that evolved on the islands of New Zealand, it's flightless because it didn't have any predators that were ground predators, and so it didn't really need to fly anywhere to stay away from them or build a nest. And their habit of building a nest in a hole in the ground that is easily accessible would become part of their undoing through no fault of their own, but we'll get to that in a second. The Kakapo is a really interesting looking bird. It's a very large, kind of husky parrot, and the male has an interesting call during the mating season. It makes this thing that they call a boom, and it sounds kind of like boom, 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 except you could hear it a kilometer away. That was me, by the way. That wasn't a recording. And you could hear it a kilometer away. It kind of sounds like someone's having a dance party in the distance. So that's pretty cool. Another cool thing about these birds, as I said, they're flightless, and they have they walk around and they climb through trees using their legs. They don't fly at all. And as I said, this is one of these things that they never developed the need to evolve to fly, because, as I said, they weren't escaping anything, and everything on the ground was just cool. Kiwis, New Zealand's national bird, same deal. No flight there either. The Kakapo have wings, though, very short ones, but again, not functional in the way that we normally expect bird wings. And as you know, or you probably know, that all birds are related to dinosaurs, the feathered dinosaurs. And that's kind of cool, because the Kakapo is really like a kind of dinosaur still roaming the earth. Unfortunately, the Kakapo might be a lot more like some of its dinosaur relatives in the future because it's near extinction. There are only something like 100 kakapo left. That's individual kakapo. That's a very small number. So these are birds that are very critically endangered. And this is of national concern in New Zealand, and steps are being made. Then, sadly, the reason for that is more than a millennium of other ground walking creatures that are predators being present on the islands of New Zealand. So when human beings showed up and had on their ships what in Maori is called kiore, which are a type of Polynesian rat. Well, with rats and humans now entering the equation, that just added 2 new land mammal predators to the list of 0 predators of Kakapo. And when more human beings came and brought with them cats and dogs and rats of different types from around the world, the Kakapo was really up against it. And then with the, loss of habitat and particular diseases that they were really affected by, well, that's how we got to where we are today with the Kakapo. On the other side of the world, we have the tale of another bird, a bird called the red-billed Quelea, or Quelea. Their story is the opposite of the Kakapo, and they're kind of a little bit the opposite of a Kakapo because they're very small, just about 5 inches in size, and they're sparrow-like, and they have red bills, very distinctive bright red bills that are small, and that small bill is going to be important. The smallness of size is going to be important because of what they eat. And what they eat is going to have a direct impact on why there are 1.5 billion individuals estimated to be in the Quelea population. That is first in the world among wild birds. A kind of second would be that house sparrow that I talked about in the beginning that showed up in my kitchen window. There's an estimate there's about 1.4 billion house sparrows flying around the world. And the thing about the house sparrow is that in some places they have gone away, and in some places there are greater populations. So that's also interesting because in some places it appears like there are no more sparrows left, and then in other places there's lots of sparrows, and in certain places they've come back. But the house sparrow is another very populous bird, and the estimates are about 100 million fewer individuals than the Quelea. And the cool thing about the Quelea is that unlike the house sparrow, which is in a lot of places around the world, the Quelea is just in Africa. And if you look at a map of where Quelea are, you'll see that they're from the west coast of Africa to the east coast of Africa in the area that's called the Sahel, which is an Arabic word for coast, although some believe it's an old word for plain, and they're not sure which one it definitely comes from, but most say that it comes from a word for coast. Meaning it's the coast of the Sahara Desert. It's just the southern coastline. It's not water, it's land, but it's a very poetic way to look at it. And that southern coast of the Sahara that stretches across from west to east across Africa, that is largely a semi-arid steppe climate. And if you continue down to follow semi-arid steppe climates in East Africa and in the southern portions of Africa, but not on the southern coast of Africa, because that has a different climate, you'll see that that's where Quelea tend to be most populous. And there seems to be a very strong correlation to one thing, and that's to a seed crop, a grain, known in English as millet. And millet has two things going for it. And that's one, it grows well in semi-arid steppe climates that you see in those areas I just mentioned. And two, it's small. And if you look at the areas where millet is not grown, so if you look south of the western part of the Sahel, places in Niger and Mali and Nigeria, if you look south of there into a wetter climate of the kind of central part of Africa there, you'll notice that there's very little and actually no millet production to speak of. And you will also see that there are no Quelea to speak of, because where you find millet in Africa is where you are going to find Quelea, because the seeds of the millet are small and their beaks are small. And so they're perfect. They go, what's the bird equivalent of hand and glove? Wing in wing cover. And as the emphasis on the cultivation of millet becomes greater because of increased droughts, and as the human population in those areas where millet is being grown grows, and therefore more millet must be grown, you will see a further increase in the population of Quelea. And one of the things that Quelea have done that is neat to protect their generations of Quelea are that they do their nests and the hatching at the exact same time, all together in mass. And so this is really helpful because what you're doing, a lot like the cicadas in the U.S. that are hatching right now as we speak, the just sheer number helps with predators, because that means that the predators have a lot to choose from, which means there's no way the predators are going to be able to eat all of your next generation. And so that's a really good way to ensure survival. Well, let's see what the cards have to say about all of this, and I'll ask for one of them to sing today. So cards, yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards tell us some things. It's the bottom one. Say I am rather than I could be. Card number 7. When you're considering a work identity, make it a goal to say convincingly and calmly to yourself and others, I am X and I do X, rather than I could be X or I could do X. So try that on for size right now and see how you feel about it. Just say, I am blank. And whatever comes to mind, say that out loud, see how it feels, and I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.